Welcome back to the show. I'm excited to be here today with Carla Santamaria, career coach and also works in tech. And we are going to dive on all things securing six figures in our professional career. Carla, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Lucy. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a huge fan, so I am really excited for this conversation.
And like, I see you and I admire the work that you do. And one of the things that I love about you is the boldness and also like how our values align so much. So I was like, yeah, you have to come to the podcast. So we're going to start by diving a little bit about your money story because as we want to normalize money conversations, especially with Latinas. So tell us, how did you grow up and what was your relationship with money?
Sure thing. So I've been thinking a lot about this question just in preparation for our call. And I would say that I grew up in poverty. Like I grew up poor and I knew that I was poor. I was born in Honduras. My parents moved us to the United States right before I turned 9. And I grew up low income. Like I was on free and reduced lunch. I was took the FAFSA. Like I got a waiver for the SATs. Like I grew up knowing that I was poor. I also had a very limited view of what careers were available to me. I thought the careers that were available to me was doctor, lawyer, teacher. So I remember when I was in college, I had actually said to some friends, I'd said, I'm going to be a teacher, so I'm going to be poor for the rest of my life. And one of them said, that's not necessarily true because you could invest. And I just brushed it off because I'm like, she doesn't know what I'm talking about. Like, she doesn't know my life. And I grew up poor and I knew that I was in a low paying career. And even in the nonprofit world, when I started, I was making very little money. Like, I started as an AmeriCorps Vista making like $1,000 a month living in South Florida. And even when I joined the workforce, I was also still very low income. And I made for the first 10 years of my career, I got my first job right out of high school in 2009, all the way up until my first job right out of grad school. Like those 10 years that I was working, I was making less than $20,000 a year. And it wasn't until after graduate school I started working in higher education and I was making 51K. And then I realized I was underpaid. I had this moment of realizing just how deeply underpaid I was. I job hop again. And then I more than doubled my salary in less than 10 months. And now between my salary and my coaching income and my investment, I'm on track to having made less than 20K a year for the first 10 years of my career to being on track to bringing in 200K a year. And it's something that I'm still trying to step into, but I grew up very low income. And so I had to very quickly in the past 5 or 6 years do a lot of money mindset work and really understand that I can trust myself to be someone who is a wise steward of having of this significantly bigger income than anybody else in my family.
And I'm like, I'm here for it. I want to see you win. And congrats on that because it's a huge milestone, but also it shows the importance of doing the work, the money mindset, as you mentioned. But I want to come back to something that you said, which was you decided to work in the non-for-profit, which I see a lot of Latinas going to non-for-profit sector. And to be honest, like that kind of bothers me because you don't see Joan or Karen going into non-for-profit. It's always Latinas. So why did you decided that non-profit was like the next step for you? What was like Carla thinking when she's, yes, I'm going to apply for that non-for-profit?
Yes. Oh my, of course. Lucy, let me know if you've ever heard of this. I just want to give back to my community.
Yes.
Yes. And so I very much had that mindset too. And I still have that mindset of giving back to my community, but now it's expanded. I know that now I can donate to causes that I like or that I support. I know that I can volunteer my time. I know that it means so much more. It's not necessarily tying my job and my source of making a living to this giving back to my community. And I'm so glad that you asked this question because one of my favorite podcast episodes that I've ever recorded was is called Why Women of Color Must Leave Their Low-Paying Nonprofit Jobs. And you asked me what I was thinking. I was thinking the same thing that every Latina and woman of color is thinking, because we were socialized into these jobs. We are socialized to be the caregivers. We are socialized to think that in order to make the world a better place, that a nonprofit job is the answer. We were socialized into these jobs, like, even if it's both, I would say both systematically and sometimes even subconsciously, from teachers who tell us, oh, have you ever considered working on this, or from math classes and science classes that create hostile environments for women, particularly for Latinas and women of color. And so I thought again that I had to work at this nonprofit because I cared, and I didn't want to be one of those like selfish people or one of those sellouts. And I see now, looking back, that it really was a lot of socialization. What was going on through my mind before I realized all this is that I had been, like, growing up low income, growing up in poverty. I had been the beneficiary of so many of these nonprofit organizations. And so I knew that I wanted to give back by working in these organizations. That felt to me like a very full circle moment. But as I've come to learn, there's so many things wrong with the nonprofit industrial complex, and women of color are socialized into this. And we really do need to normalize the conversation that there's more that is out there. There's more ways for you to give back to your community. It doesn't mean you have to work at a low paying nonprofit job.
Yeah, I love writing checks now. I'm like, you want my help? Let me write you a check. Where as before, I used to volunteer my time. I used to raise my hand and say, yeah, you need someone to volunteer at the booth. Yes, I will do it. You need someone to help you set up for the event. I will do it. I was always the one raising my hand to say yes, until I was like, wait a minute, like my time is non-refundable. And so I'd rather write you a check. And that's something that I do now, which I'm really proud to say that, because it has I we have done a lot of work. You have done a lot of work. I have done a lot of work to feel comfortable just saying no thank you, but here's the check. And so I love that you're sharing that. Now, how how was your life, how was your life at home when you are making 20,000? Were you living with your parents, or how were you able to afford housing and personal expenses? Because I'm like, 20,000 is not a lot of money.
Yeah, it's not. And thank you so much for asking that, because I am very lucky in that respect that I had the support of my parents. And now my parents are also working class immigrants, and my parents got divorced when I was 18, 17, something like that. And I think when I turned 18, I moved in with my dad. And so all through college, basically, yeah, I think I was at my first job in 2009 and I moved in with my dad. And so all through college and being an AmeriCorps member, and then even grad school, he supported me in that he allowed me to live at his house rent free. And so I didn't have that expense of housing, which is such a big expense. And most of the time, oh my God, I've never said this publicly, but my dad gave me his credit card. Like, I didn't realize how much of a daddy's girl I was until hearing now. But actually, once I graduated from college, even though I was only making $1,000 a month, I would still try to like pay for my own expenses. Like my car insurance, I remember, was $900 for 6 months. And I would save up and pay for that in my credit card and then pay it off slowly, because I think I had like 0% interest at the time. And so I was able to really support myself because I was supported by my parents, just providing housing. And when I was in college, my dad paid for my car insurance and cell phone and things like that. And like this little money that I was making was very much for cositas, everything else, and clothing, and like buying my clothes at Ross and like shopping at Aldi, which is something that I still do. But yeah, so I was making that little money when I graduated from when I finished my graduate degree, and I started my first full-time job that paid, my quote unquote my first big girl job, as much as I hate that phrase, but that's what people would call it. And I was making the most money I was ever making. I was making 50,000 something $100 a year. I was like, "Oh my God, that's so much money." But then I also had the most expenses I'd ever had in my life because I was working in downtown Miami and I was paying 50 to 100, sometimes $150 in tolls every month. I was paying so much more for gas every month. And because I had graduated and had a job, I started paying my dad rent. He never asked for it, but I would just sell it to him. And so I realized, oh my God, even though I'm making what I thought was a lot of money, I still don't necessarily have a lot of money. And this was in 2019. I moved out. My partner and I moved in together in 2020, 4 weeks before lockdown. And it was also that I moved in 4 weeks. We moved in together 4 weeks before lockdown. And of course, once everything was locked down, my expenses reduced again. But that's how I was able to survive. I had the support of my parents.
Yeah, I'm like, thank goodness for our parents. Sometimes, I'm not sure how you feel. For me, I feel that the older I get, the more compassion and respect I have for my parents, especially my mom. I grew up with my mom because she went through a lot. And sometimes when we're younger, we don't realize that they're making all these sacrifices to help us. And now we're like, oh my God, you were amazing. You let me like live with you rent free. And that is such a great privilege to have. And thank you so much for sharing that. Now, Carla, you help women do some amazing things that I love, which is you help them job hop to six figures. You also help them double their salary. Can we talk about that? Because we want more mujeres to make more money in 2025 and beyond. So can you share with us? Let's consider someone who is, because I know she's listening right now, in a non-for-profit right now, and she's going through the same mindset that you went through, where she's like, I love my job. I know I can make a difference. I know there's other jobs out there that pay more, but why should I leave a non for profit for a better paying job? And how can I do it, most importantly?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So if someone is ready to apply for a job, but they love their non for profit, what are the actionable steps that they can take to really literally like job hop to six figures or double their salary?
Yes, of course. The first thing, it's not one of the steps, and I'll get to the steps in just a second, but I just want to acknowledge that there's a lot of pain in leaving a job that you love. When I found out that I was underpaid in my higher education job, it was heartbreaking because I loved that job. I loved it, but I knew that I had to love myself more. I knew that I had to leave. I knew that I didn't come to this country to be overworked and underpaid. And that's one of the things that I would say to, I know she's out there, she's listening. Like, your parents didn't come to this country for you to be overworked and underpaid in a desk job instead of in a physical job, even if that desk job is a nonprofit. So I just want to acknowledge that it can be painful to leave, but you got this. So that's the first thing. Now, second thing, to double that salary, to get to six figures, the first thing that I would say is to focus on your current skills. So many of us as Latinas, as first gen, as women of color, we think that we need another certificate, that we need another degree. As somebody that
I
graduated
think
with my
I think
master.
she's massaging her head right now because she's like, "Ouch, that pedrada hurt me." It's right. That's how I think, right? So go on.
Yes. So if I had $1 for every person who told me, should I get my PMP? And I'm like, okay, yeah. Anyway, you don't need another degree. You need what you need to do. And here's the thing, you don't need another degree because you are already enough. Focus on the skills you already have. And I say this over and over again. Every job that exists in the nonprofit exists in the corporate world. So, if in the nonprofit you are working in human resources, there's human resources in the corporate world. If in the nonprofit you are working in fundraising, there is sales in the corporate world. And usually, most corporations that are like Fortune 500, Fortune 100 have a foundation where you can do that nonprofit, where you can do that fundraising work. If you work in IT, payroll, accounting, or even in direct service, there is always a parallel to the corporate world. So you don't need another degree. You need to focus on the skills you already have. That is the first thing. The second thing, and these are like the 5 steps that I walk my clients through, so I'm just going to tell you all the 5 steps. The second thing is to decide what you want. Sometimes people tell me, like, I'm so overwhelmed, I don't know where to look. And while all of that is valid, start with what you want. Start with picturing what you want from your dream life. And then it's okay. Once you think about what you want from your dream life, or even what you want from your life 12 or 18 months from now, what would you need from a job in order to fit into that? So let me give you my example. When I left higher education, there was so many things that I didn't know that I wanted. There was just so many things I didn't know. But I knew that I wanted, first of all, to stop driving on the highway. I hated spending an hour and a half in traffic. So I was like, I knew that I want a job close to my house. So I went from driving an hour and a half to driving 19 minutes. 19 minutes each way. So I knew what I wanted. The second thing is I wanted three things: close to my house, to make more money because I found that I was underpaid. And then third is to have the job title, diversity, equity, and inclusion, because I knew that I was pivoting into that area and that I would need that in my official title. And guess what? In my next job, that is exactly what I got. I got a job that got all those three things. I have clients who have told me, like, I just want a job that lets me work from anywhere in the US so I can travel and visit my friends. And guess what? That's what she got. Like, when she was evaluating job offers, that's what she got. Another person told me, like, I just want a job that's going to give me the skills so that I can grow my business. And I'm like, okay. In the next job that she got, she was a community lead, and she was doing outreach and communications and presentations, all skills that were going to help her in her business. So that's the second thing. Decide what you want from your next job. You don't have to decide what you want forever and ever, just from your next job. You're focusing on taking the next step. And then the third thing, and this one is very important, is expand your network. So I went from higher education to healthcare to tech, and I had 35 coffee chats in 90 days. And it was a lot, but it was also what got me closer. It helped me understand what I knew and didn't know. Somebody asked me, Carla, what kind of tech company do you want to work for? And Lucy, all I could say was Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, like the FANG stocks. I
Yeah,
think I
because
had
you
heard of
don't know
them.
what else is out there. Like
Yes.
you don't even know that there's, for example, now that because I most of my clients are Latinas in tech, and so I know that there's like healthcare that also has tech, that companies that are funded by Latinos, like fintech, for example. I didn't know, and that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because we need to share all of the things that are out there, because literally there's a mujer right now listening to the podcast and all she can think is like in her area, right? Like in this Seattle area, this is all I can get, versus thinking like I'm limitless, I can have a job anywhere in the US or in the world. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm gonna let you continue because I was like, I'm taking notes right now.
Thank you. No, absolutely. There's so many things. There's startups, there's companies that are more established but are pre-IPO or that they haven't gone public yet. Then there's companies that have gone public. There's companies that are being acquired. What kind of company? I didn't know that until I started expanding my network. And I know you said she's listening and she's thinking, okay, but I don't know anyone in tech. I don't know anyone in corporate. You know what I did? I opened on my Facebook, which I hadn't used in years. I hadn't used since like Trump got elected. I'm like, I need to get out of here. I opened my Facebook and I looked at my friends, and then I opened my LinkedIn and I started adding my Facebook friends on my LinkedIn. And that's why I started growing my LinkedIn. And that's how I was like, oh, look, Fulanito that I worked one semester with in college at the student center works at Google. Let me message him. Oh, look, Fulanita that I did an internship with over there works AT&T. And those messages were awkward. Oh my gosh. Hey, I know I haven't talked to you in 10 years, but I'm trying to pivot. Would you have some time to talk? But if if somebody's listening and thinking like, oh my god, I can't do that, there's at least $30,000 on the line. That's the average that my clients make. It's like a salary increase of $30,000. So if somebody would pay you $30,000 for you to send 30 awkward LinkedIn messages, would you do it? 100%. And so that is that key of expanding your network, going to in-person events, inviting people to follow up. And that's so important because that's how you can learn what else is out there. And then after you're expanding your network, this is a really important piece. You have to apply and follow up. When I applied to jobs the first time when I was leaving higher education, I was just like applying, submitting everything on the applicant tracking system and like editing my resume and spending 3 days on it and then finally submitted it. And then by the time I would wake up in the morning, I'd get an email, oh, sorry, you don't meet the criteria. Goodbye. It was terrible. But what I did the second time, and this is what I teach my clients to do now, is for every single job application that you submit, send a follow up message. This is why you expanded your network. Send a follow up message. Hey, I see that you work in the communications team at this company. I just applied to a communications specialist job. Would you be open to flagging my application to the hiring manager? And again, this might feel awkward, but this is how you get jobs. This is how you get a human to look at your application. And by the way, it's not that you're cutting the line or that you're being sleazy, because sometimes people think that. And it's no, if you are the most qualified person in the room, you will get the job. But the reason that you will be invited for an interview is because somebody spent 5 more seconds looking at your application because you sent that message. So it's not cheating. It's not like going around. It's literally just getting a human to look at your application. So when you apply, that's how you follow up. And then, of course, you have to negotiate your pay. Again, you learn about this when you are expanding your network. One of the questions that I always tell my clients to ask is, how much can someone in this field expect to earn? Because I hate the fact that it's still considered rude. Hey, how much do you make? And if you don't feel comfortable asking that question, you can say, how much can someone in this job expect to earn? So if you know that everybody is making 105, 110, and then they offer you 90, you know that you need to counter with, actually, I think my skills are more aligned with 105, 110K. So again, let me just to summarize it. You focus on your current skills. Focus on what you already have, because every job in the nonprofit has a parallel in corporate. Then you decide what you want from your job and what you want from your life. Then you expand your network. Then you apply and follow up. And then you negotiate your pay.
I love that. I'm like, I'm taking notes because this is people are paying you for this, right? And then you are here telling us like the good stuff. Now you talk about salary negotiation, and for a lot of us, that word negotiation comes with a lot of heaviness. So, what are some mindset hacks or mindset tricks or mindset work that people can do before they start even thinking about negotiation? Because you said it at the beginning of the podcast, we have been socialized to accept what is given to us. And I feel that we have also been socialized to say, I'm so grateful for having a 401k and I shouldn't ask for a salary increase or negotiate anything.
Of course. So the first thing that nobody ever told me, but I had to learn the hard way, is that the first person you're negotiating your salary with is yourself.
Mm.
It's not the hiring manager, it's not the interviewer, it's not the recruiter, it is yourself. If you don't believe that you're worthy of earning more money, no one is going to believe it either. And you can practice all of the strategies, but if you don't believe it, if you don't believe that your skills are worth that, no one's going to believe it either. And so that's the first thing. So just this is where some of that money mindset work has come in for me. Like I had to make peace, or like I had to heal a lot of my relationship with money. So that's the mindset side. Then the strategy. So with my clients, I have this whole entire salary negotiation benchmark template, but I'm going to give you the gist of it. So you need to look, there's really 4 things that determine your pay. It is location, industry, function, and then level. So it's 4 things, right? So let's say somebody in Seattle that is a marketing manager at a mid-level nonprofit is going to be making more than a marketing manager at a mid-level nonprofit in Kansas. So that's what I mean by location. So you have to focus, understand the location. How much are people in different locations? Like, what is the benchmark for your city? Then industry. If you're a marketing manager at a mid-sized nonprofit, it's going to be different than a marketing manager at a Fortune 50 company. So you have to mention, so the industry matters. Are you like in retail? Are you in food and beverage? Are you in hospitality? Or are you in nonprofit? Are you in education? So that's industry. And then function. Somebody who is a manager of engineers in a Fortune 50 company is going to be making more than somebody that is a manager of human resources in a Fortune 50 company. So that's what I mean by function. And then the last one is your level. This is what people mean by entry level, mid level, senior level. By the way, if you see that on LinkedIn, that's made up. Don't even pay attention. How you know what level it is, you look at the responsibilities. Responsibilities like coordinate, support, assist, that's entry level. Responsibilities like manage, end to end, design, that's mid level. And then responsibilities like direct, strategize, spearhead, that is senior level. So you want to see what job is in mid level, entry level, mid level, senior level. Sometimes, if you're pivoting from nonprofit to corporate, you might have to take that junior level role, but it's going to pay more money, and it's going to, you know what I mean? So that's why one of the steps is decide what you want, but you really want to make sure you're comparing that. So first you need to understand that you are worthy of more money, and then you need to understand what the market rate is. Just like you go to the grocery store and a pack of eggs costs $2.99, but then you go to Whole Foods and a pack of eggs is $4.99. There's a market, that's the market rate for eggs, right? Same thing with your skills have a market rate. So it's understanding the mindset that you deserve to be paid and then doing that comparison to find the market rate for your skills.
I love these. I'm like I feel like we're going to like a Pagame masterclass. Like just give me everything, and it's so important that we also implement the things that Carla is teaching us, because we need to have more money. It's I always say like nothing bad happens when Latinas have more money, and I'm fascinated by this conversation. I was like, I wish I had a career coach when I was in corporate because things would have been easier for me. But Carla, I want to come back to you and say you just said it, like close to earning 200K. I'm very chismosa, and I always like to know like how are people spending their money? Like how are you spending this money? Because at the beginning of the podcast, you mentioned that you moving with your partner. You mentioned where you are. Like how do you spend your money?
Thank you so much for asking. I don't think anybody's asked me that before. And I'm like, oh my God, how do I spend my money? No, but let me tell you. Okay. So, first of all, we bought a house, a townhouse. And I have a single family home in my vision board. Single family home with a pool, with a waterfront, with a guest room, vision boarding right now. So, definitely saving some money for that. But I guess like my own personal money routine, my money comes into my bank account and I separate an amount that is for my bills. Some people might call them like recurring fixed expenses. Yo no sé qué. I call them my bills. Okay. This is like my mortgage, how much I spend on food, how much I spend on therapy. So I have that, I move that amount into my bills account. And then I put some money in investments. And this is, by the way, this is the money that hits my bank account. So already I have made donations. I really would like to have a donations light on budget, but right now I already have taken deductions. I'm sorry, not donations. So the deductions for my 401k, and something else that I contribute to is an ESPP, which is an employee purchase. I don't know, it's like an employee stock purchase plan. There we go. That's what that is. So I work for a publicly traded company that I can buy some stock. So for the money, like if I look at what my net gross pay is before my net pay, I'm like, oh my God, where's my money going? It's going to my 401k, it's going to my ESPP, it's going to like my health insurance and all that. So then once that money is hits my bank account after those deductions are taken out, I separate my bills money, then I contribute into different brokerage accounts. My 401k, no mentira, my Roth IRA is already maxed out for this year. So I'm not contributing there anymore because that's already maxed out. Sometimes, depending on if the holidays are coming up or if I have a special trip, I put some money into sinking funds. But that's really where the bulk of my money goes. In my bills account, I have, of course, like my mortgage, my car payment. I actually bought a new car about a year and a half ago. So I'm really excited about that. So yeah, so that's mostly where it is. I do a lot of spending. I'm sorry, I do a lot of investing, and I separate my money into like different accounts and might give my money a roll. Sometimes I spend a little more shopping than I was like, oh my gosh, what happened here? So that's when I add a little bit more to my sinking funds. But yeah, mostly it's in I am working personally towards financial independence. So I would like I am investing a lot more now than I have in the past and that I know I will in the future because I would like to become a work optional. So could I stop shopping at Aldi? Probably. I go to the nice Aldi, still save money, and I still want to invest more as much as possible so that I can eventually have that financial independence. I do say that a part of my income comes from my coaching business. So that's the 200K includes the gross net in as a business owner. Not all the money that comes to your coaching business is income. You have to pay for different things, they from different softwares. So with my coaching income, I pay myself not too much, but I actually also invest that too. Like with the income that I pay myself from my coaching business, I invest that as well. Because again, my primary goal right now is to become work optional. And it's one of the reasons why saving for a house is becoming a little slower because I know that I want to be work optional. Hopefully, by the time I am 40, I am 33 right now.
Oh, I love that. And I'm going to do a recap of what you just said for in case my listener got a little bit distracted and they're like, wait, what? What does she have? So you increase your salary and you have multiple investment accounts. You are saving for the house. You are still spending on shit that you like Aldi or whatever it is that you like. You're still doing that, but you also have multiple income streams, which I think is fascinating because we need to have that in order to make work optional. And I know it's possible for you. And I just love like you hearing it, like you saying it aloud, like I have all of these investment accounts because sometimes we think that just because we grew up low income, that investing isn't for us or that having a six-figure salary isn't for us. And leaving the non for profit that is so toxic is not for us. And Carla is a great example of what is possible. So I love this conversation. And now, before I ask you more questions, I want to ask, what is your definition of wealth?
Wow, that is a great question. What is my definition of wealth? I think of a few things. Like if my definition of living a wealthy life, I have more time. I have more time to do the things that I love. I have right now we're in the cooler months in Florida. So I have more time to spend outdoors. I have more time with my family, with my loved ones. I have health. I have joy. So I think wealth to me is that combination of joy and love and freedom and ease. And money can buy a lot of those things. Money can pay for my housekeeper that comes every 2 weeks so that I can have more time to myself. That's also how I spend my money. It's my favorite money to spend.
Yes.
Yes. So, yes, that's my definition of wealth, just having more joy, more love, more health, more time, more freedom.
I love that. I'm like, yes, hire a housekeeper. Like I say this to my clients all the time. If you are in corporate America and you don't have a housekeeper, like you're doing such a big disservice to your career growth because you got no business leading a team, taking care of the kids, and then coming home and, oh, I'm going to scrub toilets. No, it's an identity. And sometimes that work is required for us to believe that, hey, I can have a housekeeper without feeling guilty. I can have the investment accounts without feeling guilty. And yes, I can go ahead and negotiate my salary or leave the organization that doesn't support my dreams. So this conversation has been so fascinating. But now I want to ask you, how can we support the work that you do and where can people find you?
Sure thing. So you can find me wherever you listen to this podcast, mostly on Apple and Spotify. You can listen to the First Gen Coach podcast. That is the name of my podcast, where I talk a lot about these things. I'm also on Instagram at Carla the First Gen Coach. You can find me on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn a lot when I was job searching, and now that I'm focusing more on my coaching, I'm trying to like, okay, sabes que? I'm going to be an example to my community about why you should use LinkedIn. So you'll see. I'm trying to go back to using LinkedIn as much as I did in the past. So you can find me on my podcast, Carla the First Gen Coach, on Instagram or on LinkedIn, Carla Santamaria, and folks can work with me one on one. I take a limited number of clients every year because I have a full time job in tech. But if I have a spot available, I'd love to work with folks because beautiful things happen when Latinas make more money.